Welcome to Season 2 of the Let's Talk podcast hosted by WellHouse Church, where we talk about what it's like to be a Christian Monday through Saturday, to be a person of faith in a culture against faith. So let's talk about the importance of caring for yourself. We have talked a lot about self-care on this podcast and on practicing presence because it is important to your overall well-being and to everything that you do. Those things are so interconnected that if you are not okay, everything else around you is not okay. And so in that idea, and that can happen in many different ways, right? So you can just be stretched too thin. There could be stress at work. There could be a bunch of other things like emotional and trauma-related things that just make life experience hard. And so the way that you help those things is by caring for yourself. So in that idea, we may not actually be putting out content as frequently. We have decided that things are going to kind of come out as they come out. Because we don't feel like we have done... We feel like we have done the best we could thus far. And need some time to re-envision. And in doing so, taking more time to rest and care for ourselves. So that we can come back and do the thing that we talked about last week. Create a community that is trying to charge your divinity and supply resources for your divinity and do that in a safe space. We just need to take a little break, and not even like an entire break, but like a...
Well, WellHouse is going through some changes. WellHouse is putting pause on the structured organizational elements of its existence and going back into community building relaunch mode. This journey through planting this church has been wild. I mean, we planted in August of 2020.
Yeah.
Had our first public service, like first public week of gatherings, like September 27th, 2020. And house gatherings.
Yeah.
Like we were trying to do something that nobody was doing.
Even in like day-to-day life, nobody was going to see other people's places.
Yeah. And so like that happened, and then January, the next January, like 4 months later, my wife told me she wanted a divorce. And so I spent an entire year dealing with a very bad marriage situation, trying to save a marriage that did not want to be saved. And then this year, we got kicked out of our partnership program, lost funding. I mean, just turn after turn after turn. It's been trial after trial after trial. And Clayton and I did all of this while having other jobs.
I will say, like, you got us here.
Well,
we helped, we supported.
Yeah.
But like, I don't ever want you to think that like I don't see the work that you put in.
No.
Yeah, like, nah. I see how much you put out.
Yeah. Well, and for that reason, Clayton, I mean, because I put out work and there needed to be somebody by my side, Clayton put in work. And we just don't have it in us anymore. The goal setting out was always to operate at this, but I thought that we would grow and expand faster than we did. And part of that's because at every turn there was a new hurdle.
Yeah.
And you start out with COVID. And so sharing microphones with people isn't, not what you need to do. And then, excuse me. And so during COVID, right, everything gets higher in price. So people's expendable income goes down. So there's less money around to give. And then the year of my divorce, that was rough. That was rough. And then
Which, by the way, like let's actually set up a timeline here. End of 2020, beginning 21.
January 5th, 2021 is when my ex-wife asked me for a separation.
Which is when everything changed.
Everything changed. I sold my house. You can go back. We were filming in one room. And then we just weren't.
Yeah. In the first several episodes, we filmed in one room. We switched to a different room, switched back to a different room, and then kind of lived in this weird little space for a minute until we got our studio.
Yep.
Because life happened, bro.
Yep.
Yep. It sucks.
Yeah.
It's hard. And it takes a lot.
Yeah. We put out 5 pieces of unique content every week, prepping for those and writing those and recording those and editing those. And it was a lot. And we just don't have it in us anymore to do it at this rate. I would not be doing my job as the pastor of this church if I didn't say, hey, we need to slow down and reevaluate some things, because this is no longer restorative.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, and because we've had so many trials and all these roadblocks create different roadblocks and hurdles, and they've evolved into this place where when we started this, Clayton and I had part-time jobs doing other things. And now we both have full-time jobs doing other things, which makes this feel like the part-time job. Which is because we just, there's
just not enough hours in the day.
There's not enough hours in the day. And, at some point you just have to go, okay, wait, it's got to look a little different. And so WellHouse is not going away. WellHouse is not going away. WellHouse is going to still be a community. We're still going to have all of our networks, and we're going to start doing community events. And we're going to go back to just being a community. And when we come up with great content ideas and we have the time to film them, we absolutely will.
Yeah.
We will still continue this podcast and we will still continue to have these conversations. But they certainly won't be every week, I don't think.
Yeah, and that is definitely something that I will say is like our content is very representative of how our brains are working.
Yeah.
You see very raw into mine and Cullen's brain.
Yeah, you see the rawest parts of our brain on these podcasts. I mean, we have to be. We
You're
put out so
scraping
much.
the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah,
Like
you're getting a peek into everything.
Like you are full face down in our brains. And sometimes things are not communicated the best. That is something that I will notice, that I have noticed, and I would like to comment on is like, because like we are putting out so much content and you are seeing the interconnectedness of our brains. I've had several people actually comment on this now, but one frequently. Sounds like a lot of what we do is problem focused because there's a problem, right? We need to talk about that problem.
Yeah.
In our community, the way we were trying to do church, trying to do this thing was going to be the solution.
Right.
And it just didn't feel like we could do it the way we wanted to, the way we had vision for. Life just didn't work out that way.
Well, life couldn't work out that way.
Yeah.
I mean, a key central point of our entire plant was 2 houses that within the first year of us planting were sold. I went through a divorce. I mean, COVID was already its own hiccup, and then we lost funding. And that's a huge one. When you lose funding, not even into the, second full, not even the complete of the second year of your plant, 18 months in and you lose funding, that's big.
Yeah.
And we didn't really talk about it. We didn't really talk about it because WellHouse is not a place where I just want to ask people for money. Like that's not what people come to church for. We need money. You got to raise money, all that kind of stuff. But it's just, I mean, money causes lots of problems in church. And so when you lose funding like that, we didn't make a big deal out of it. We just kind of went on about our way. I mean, we cut salaries and got better jobs. I mean, the simple matter of it is like when you lose that kind of funding, the only thing you can cut is salaries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, we already run bare bones.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's the deal with this model is, right, there's a threshold where you got to have some salary, like you got to have some paid people to create the infrastructure, the base, but then it can multiply at a rate that is exponentially higher, that you can stay at the same, the same expenses with very little increase while growing in the amount of money you have to do things with. But we were below that threshold and we lost funding, and that changes things because then you got to get jobs that have more money to give you, the ability to live above the poverty line. And unfortunately, that ends up taking time.
It does.
And so we need to re-envision. We need to rest. we need to take some time to learn, to reflect on what we've learned and what has worked and what has not worked and what we could do better. And we can each go back to the drawing board, and we get to continue to just be a community. You know, it's so funny that this is happening the way it's happening, because one of our mottos around here is never forsake community for the discipline. And this is literally the epitome of that. I mean, we are not forsaking community for the discipline. And our community was going to suffer from our discipline of trying to continue to operate at the level we were operating at, when it was just not going to continue to yield the kind of community fruits that we were looking for.
So like we were talking last week about like your spiritual leaders are not the keeper on knowledge and wisdom.
Right.
We put so much energy and time into content.
Yeah.
It became that.
Yeah.
In a way. And because you see the deep inner workings of our brain, sometimes we try to talk about other voices, but sometimes you see like the very harsh critics in our brains about these voices. And like, that's not inclusive. That is something that like, I wish we could have done better, is like not shit on everybody. Like, I do think that there is room and space to communicate the problems.
Well, I think for me I think it was real revealing that when we started WellHouse, I was angry at religious institutions, and I only got more and more angry at them through this process. And it's because they have only continued to further betray me and us. And so I progressively got more and more angry at them, to the point now where I'm just like, I'm resolved. It's just like, I don't have anything left to give to it right now. Like, I am depleted.
Yeah. And so specifically for this podcast, this is my goal for it moving forward. I don't think it's going to be a regular thing. I think what it's going to be is, as I am in the community, as I am like experiencing culture, using that to fuel content, when that happens.
Yeah.
Maybe it turns into a series. Maybe it's a one-off episode. I just ask, stay subscribed, right? If you are, I ask that you just you stay there so you get alerted when like an episode comes out.
Well, and if you're watching on YouTube, our Pints of Perspectives podcast is still going to come out every week.
So there is still going to be WellHouse content coming out.
WellHouse content, yeah, there will still be a piece of WellHouse content that comes out almost every week. It'll only be one instead of 5.
Yeah.
And I think I'll still occasionally do stories. I think there'll be one-offs. They'll just be when I really need to communicate something.
And maybe there's a closer look that follows it.
If it
needs one.
If it isn't a closer look, I might just monologue it. I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
We are redesigning a lot of things.
We are re-envisioning everything.
And that's okay. Church needs to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Church needs to do that.
Yes.
And a part of re-envisioning is also like Cullen and I taking time to look at our lives and where we're at and how that affects how we're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
Taking time to care for self, rest, reflect. But this is by no means goodbye. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk podcast hosted by WellHouse Church. Be sure to give us a rating and a review if you enjoyed the episode. It's free and it helps us immensely. Also, feel free to check out our other podcasts.